What's up, everybody? And after I showed some Fallen Avatar the other day, and obviously this is a boss not many people are getting to see, but it is a roadblock for those people who are there. So I'm going to do some things that they kind of wanted to go through the thought process. And it's a good video in terms of guides and stuff, because we're going to be doing some things which break the mold of what we're supposed to do. So in the previous video on Fallen Avatar, I kind of used it as the overwhelming. There's a huge amount of information that you can see on the left-hand side of my screen of things that need to get done in a certain order, in a certain precise way. Now, in Wrath of the Lich King, when I was still raid leading, one of my biggest pet peeves that I started to have with certain people was that they had programmed themselves to do exactly what needed to be done in order, and anything that needed some adaptation, a bit of a change, or any sort of deviation from the norm just wouldn't happen. And I got into a big fight with one of my close friends, actually, during a Lich King heroic progress, because there was a very set way we dealt with Defile. But a situation arose where it had to change, and I saw it happening, called immediately that something else had to happen, and this guy didn't respond and didn't do it. And afterwards, I was like, why didn't you do what I asked you to do? And he said, well, that's not what we're supposed to do. I said, I know that, but I told you to do it a different way. And his response was, I'm not going to do that because that would get me in trouble if I caused the mistake. Now, I understand that a lot of people are very fearful of being the one that causes the wipe, right? But at the same time, not being able to adapt is even worse, particularly in fights like the Fallen Avatar. So there's an interesting thing with Fallen Avatar, if you don't know, is this doesn't really work on timers. This fight works on basically a spell cooldown system. The Avatar has a spell cooldown system, and it's very noticeable even from normal and heroic upwards, is that his abilities actually just have a cooldown. And what you'll often see is the abilities come off cooldown because he has a cast time for some abilities, and they start to rack up, which means he can use any of the abilities. And typically, he actually uses them in reverse order. So you'll see it here. But what I mean is you might have Unbound Chaos coming off cooldown, but he's casting Rupturing Realities. So while he's casting that, Unbound Chaos will come off cooldown, so he can't use it because he's casting something else. And at the same time, Shadow Blades will come off cooldown. And at the same time, you might get something else. So what happens is, like Touch of Sargeras, for example. So what happens generally is when he stops casting Rupturing Realities, you would expect in a traditional boss for him to cast Unbound Chaos, because that was the next thing in the list. But that's not how it works with Fallen Avatar. What he does is he generally uses what immediately just came off cooldown and then works through his backlog. Meaning that the fight is different regularly. It's regularly different, and the timings need to be adjusted constantly. So we're going to get into this, and there's a few things you need to be aware of. One, we knew from our progression and our testing of this boss that DPS wasn't going to be an issue. In fact, we were going to be way, way ahead of DPS. Especially in this, we killed it after the Nether Crucible came out. We knew we were going to be miles ahead. What that does is free me up to play safer in certain areas than trying to like squeeze every last bit of DPS out, and play a little bit more risky, which is something you do if you were like really up against it. So let's get started here. So we're going to do a standard pull here. I'm obviously on a Fire Mage, which is pretty standard. A lot of people think the Fire Mage is just to cleave onto the Maiden. And also when DPSing the Maiden, you're cleaving back on the Avatar. That is a part of it, but it's mainly for the last phase. It's the fact that we can DPS completely while on the move. So we have a standard starting position. Now, I want you to note here, very interesting, is that we're off to the left, right? You can see me to the left, our other Fire Mage, I'm dagger on me, because I was continuously getting Shadow Blades on this night. Over and over again, I was getting Shadow Blades. Sometimes like 3 or 4 a fight. So I changed my name to Dagger on me, and Grinder Boy is our other mage. So you can see the order here where we go me, Toei, who's the actual mage, is his real name in-game, and then the Moonkin and so on and so forth. Now, what you're going to see is something that harkens back to the videos I made in Mists of Pandaria, for those of you who were there, which is positioning. And I did a comparison with Method at the time using Sparkug's point of view, is how important it is to, in fights with a lot of movement, is to return to your original position. Because we start in this position for a good reason. We have a lovely spread. People have loads of room to move around. But if the fight makes you move a lot, which this fight obviously does, it's very important that you drift back to your original position. And if everybody does that, then throughout the fight, you'll always have plenty of room. Now, we're going to see that not happen throughout this fight. And you'll see me kind of utilize that to my advantage in some ways. So off we go. Now, basically, all I'm doing here is usual opener. There's nothing special here. I'm basically fishing for bracers procs. to go into the first combustion. This guy has a lot of health. And then I'm going to set up for my soak. Now, the way we do the soaks here is you can see, if I bring my mouse up, you can see I'm stood in front and Azuriel, who I'm going to take over from, is behind. Now, the purple beam that comes from here travels all the way to the boss, but it's blocked by whoever stands in front of it. So what we don't want to happen is people to not be able to move around this space. So what we do is we have the person who's soaking go as far back as possible, making the beam non-existent. It frees up the whole room. You can imagine how much more difficult this fight would be if these beams were reasonably long. Like this over here, I think is too long for me. What we want to do is make this beam as small as possible. This gives everybody freedom to move across all of these platforms without fear of getting a tick of the debuff or something like that. Really don't want that to happen. So you can see Azuriel's there. Now when Azuriel hits 7 stacks, you can see I'm tracking it here. She's just going to move out of the beam and it's instantly going to run into me. So you can see I'm combusting here and she's at 5. See, I move back. I'm ready to take this space, so I don't create a big beam. She gets 7, she moves out. Simple as that. And it works really well because Rupturing Realities is coming. Now, this debuff that I'm taking, every stack of it reduces the amount of healing I get by 10%. So at 5 stacks, I'm 50% reduced healing. Now, I'm supposed to move here at 7. Now, what you can see is I'm at 6. There's no one in front of me. Now, the person who takes over from me is a healer. And this fight is very, very stressful for healers, especially if we just had Rupturing Realities go off. And sometimes you end up in a problem where there's just the guy's just not there. And it happens because they're focused on so many other things. So I get 7 here. Now, you can see I'm moving the camera around now. I'm like, where is my replacement? Because if I hit 10 stacks, I die. But I can't even be rezzed until the debuff disappears. I can't be rezzed because it instantaneously kills you if you get rezzed. So getting 10 is a problem. But also, if I let the beam hit the boss, it's a wipe anyway. So it's a very tricky scenario where immediately we're seeing things aren't going as planned, right? I should be out of this beam bite now. I'm in a tricky situation where I can't move. I have a little bit of leeway. I could take 2 more stacks, but then I'm going to be in the 90% reduced healing situation in a fight that has absurd amounts of raid damage going out. Very dangerous to be in. So we're going to wait 8, 9, and you can see I blink out immediately. I blink out immediately at 9 because I saw the druid. You can see just down here, the druid just moved in. Now, this is brown pants time because I have 90% reduced healing on me right now. Luckily, I have a decent enough health bar. I communicated this at this point, right? I was like, look, healers, I'm taking 90% reduced healing. Don't spam heal me. I'm now going to play super safe because we're immediately going to go into an Unbound Chaos. Now, this is really terrifying if you take any damage from this because it does pulsing AoE damage anyway. Because I just can't, if I took an explosion from there, I'd have no health left and I wouldn't be able to be healed. So at this point, I'm like super, super safe. But I'm going to be preparing for the next part of the fight, which is going to be breaking the Maiden's shield. Now, because I have the Fire Starter talent, I start a touch early just to like start building the ignites on her and getting my crits going and all this kind of stuff. I get 3 crits above 90% health, and while she's got a shield on, she just stays above 90% health, and you can see you get rid of that. I also have my soak coming on. You're going to notice that Ice Block does not remove this debuff, you can see. So I've got 20 seconds here where I can't take any damage, which means when it's Unbound Chaos, man, I'm just running for my life. But it's all good because we're still going. So my choice is, what would I have done here? Right? I could have gone, well, I had 7. This is what I'm talking about, going back to, well, I'm supposed to move out of 7. And people have that in their brain, and you will see people do that sometimes. It's like, I hit 7, I moved out. The beam's hitting the boss now. You have to be aware that things could change on the fly, and you've got to be goddamn ready for it. You have to be, certainly when it's like a first boss kill, because what we're going to be coming up to shortly is what I'd like to refer to as the real panic mode that happens in raids. And that's going to be the point where we get through a majority of this first phase, but we're not quite there. And everybody knows that we're about to transition to the next phase. So I take my soak here. Now I have a real lame soak here, which is during Unbound Chaos. Really didn't like this, but Atisti's going to take over from me in a second, so he was getting ready for that. Unfortunately, it splashed into my area, so I took a big hit from that. Move back. Just doing a bit of backpedal dancing, just making sure everything's good. Just want to make sure everything's fine. I'm looking here. Now, what you want to notice is we've drifted some over to the left a little bit. Like, well, more and more people throughout the course of this fight are going to drift right, particularly because they have to break the Maiden shield, and the Maiden can be on any area of this platform, right? Which means people are going to need range. So if she ends up very far to the right, people are going to start drifting over there. So against 7, moving out, no big deal. Everything's fine. Now you can see Maiden's drifting. You can see her drifting right up to the other side. And we have the shield coming. So this is going to start pushing everybody to the right-hand side. Now, what you'll probably notice is I just combust on this this girl here, is that, unfortunately, like, Rupturing Reality, so you can see, moved out of range, man. Had the big pyro, had the combustion. Pyro's almost there, but she just moved out of range. Oh, rip the dream. Rip the dream. There's the DPS is in the bin for the second time this fight already, which is fine. It's no big deal. Like I said, DPS is not an issue here, so a couple of things that cause you to lose a huge... It is a huge loss in damage, but what are you going to do? I only have 7 stacks here, so I'm just playing kind of normally, just chilling. Playing good. And what we're going to see happen is I'm going to start getting Shadow Blades in a minute. And I'm going to make some choices. So you can see we get Shadow Blades on me and Toe right next to me. So I'm going to wait and see. And sometimes it's a tricky decision to make. I'm waiting to see what Toe's going to do. I'm also casting a big Pyro. I have a Braces proc. So I've got this big Braces proc. I'm not going to move just yet. I have plenty of time with Shadow Blades. I think it's so important is that you don't rush when you get these things. You're like, okay, I've got Shadow Blades. That's not a big deal. I've got 4 seconds to deal with this, which is an eternity for a mage who's got Blink. I'm going to see where Toe's going, and I'm going to blink to the back. See that other Shadow Blade, move back. Do a spin blink. Unfortunately, it's exactly where Toe left is, which is, yeah, what are you going to do? It was just a very quick blink to get back into the action so we can keep doing some damage. So, my turn to take over again. So, I move over to here. Again, you can see me taking that position, just waiting for the beam to hit me. I like being as close as possible to the person I'm taking over, so it's very clear that I'm there and I'm ready. Again, it's a kind of another lame soaking where I have to take Unbound Chaos. It sucks, but it is what it is. So, I'm going to run back as fast as possible, get out of there with the 7 stacks, double checking with my eyes that the right moment is there. Now, this one sucks. Because this is where, for me, I definitely know people are starting to panic. This is like the last shield we're going to break. And what you can see on the map here is nearly the entire raid is now enclosed in these 3 segments, or these 2 segments. Entirely to the left is totally empty, and pretty much entirely to the right is completely empty as well. This makes a big problem with Unbound Chaos, but people are going to be panicking at this point. And this is something that kind of comes with experience. People are going to start... You can feel the tension in the raid because we're getting to the point where we're actually going to start the next part of the fight and potentially kill this for the first time. Is Unbound Chaos in this scenario is a real nightmare. Because look at all these people are all in one area and they're going to start dropping bombs all over the place, right? But the shield needs to die. There's things that need to be done. So people are going to be focused on that. Like right now, people are going to be super focused on breaking the shield rather than anything else. Certainly bearing in mind the position. And it's all about bearing in mind what you can do here. So I get Shadow Blades again, and I just choose. I choose here to run as far away as possible, because there's this tension in the raid that you know is there, is people not wanting to deal with your Shadow Blade shit. It's as simple as that. People don't want to deal with your Shadow Blade shit. So I think at this point, it's a really good idea not to try and go to a range. Like I say, if I was doing max DPS, look at the things that are going on here. Like, the shield needs to die, or we're screwed. It's better and safer for me to say, that's fine. I want to make the raid DPS higher by making myself not an issue, which is often something people don't like, because you're going to be lower on the meters or whatever. But for me, I think this is a good decision, is to get this Shadow Blade. It's a non-factor. If I move it to where I move it, which is right here, it's such a non-factor for anybody to deal with. I actually blink there. I kind of want to go back and show this. There's a blink that happens here, but this bit of the floor sticks up. Blink, didn't go anywhere. What a pain in the ass. So the shield went down, all nice and safe. Everything's looking good. But I see Unbound Chaos coming. Look where I move. You see this? Instantly. This is what I'm saying. You take advantage of all this space. There's no space here. I see Unbound Chaos coming in. There was probably a call on voice comms on Discord or whatever, is that Unbound's coming. You can see it here. And all this room is empty. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fucking belt my ass over there, and I've got this entire area to deal with rather than risk that, which did cause us a death actually during that, which is, again, I think it's a case of you've just got to bear in mind to get back to where you were because that's the safest place to be. You can see Toei's good at this too, because he came back as well at this exact same time. He came back into it so he could do his bit. And take up all this extra space. It's such a simple idea when you think about it. It's like, well, we start the fight in this position because it's the safest place to be, and then we don't. Now you can see here, I actually make a decision which is stupid because I was part of the panic squad as well. Is the call was made at this point, I believe, to let Avatar transition. We got him to 23%. This is like a hilarious free win at this point, as long as we transition the fight. But what do I see? I see this purple beam not doing well. I see Azuriel's hit 10 stacks. I just charge in, but even though my debuff hasn't reset, I only had a few seconds left, but I give myself the 8 stacks and then instantly moved out of it and let it soak up. So a silly mistake by me, totally unnecessary. Now, this is interesting. So we had practiced this phase about 100 times. No exaggeration, about 100 times, because you can transition straight into this phase by just letting Avatar get full energy, which means you can practice this phase. And this phase, surprisingly, is harder than the first. A lot of people don't realize that. This phase is actually harder than the first. You can see it needs the use of avalanche elixirs, things like that. You can see everybody's turning into a meteor to land. I don't think I get a good view of it. But Azuriel died by getting 10 stacks. It's unfortunate. I think she crossed over a beam or something. I wasn't scheduled to take over. You see, my debuff hadn't run out, so it wasn't supposed to be like... I didn't cause this. I'm just pointing that out there. I didn't cause this. But Azuriel is tasked with soaking a certain meteor in this phase. And I'm aware Azuriel's dead and isn't coming back. So we'll just bear that in mind for now. So we're going to take position here. I do miss out on a big braces proc, which many of you pointed out in the previous video. Thanks for that. But I was falling through the sky. And right now I'm just scanning the floor. You can see the way I set my camera up so I can see as much as possible. Obviously, I'm tasked with soaking what appears near red. For some reason, nothing appears here. And then I'm just going to avoid the whirlwinds. Now, you can see the advantages of being a fire mage here is that you can just move and DPS constantly here. Really quite cool. Now, we're going to take up a very specific position here. This is a safe spot from tornadoes. For some reason, this spot is totally safe from tornadoes. And we're going to set this up as a soak position. Get the braces proc, wait to just about the right blink range. Now we have to stand, now the boss position here is crucial. So we have to stand at a very specific spot so that we don't take tornadoes and we can still hit the boss. Now this meteor is Azuriel's. This meteor is Azuriel's. And what can happen, like this is the first time we had, I'm not exaggerating, this is the first time we had transitioned into phase 2 properly throughout hundreds of tries. I think this took us about 250 tries, something like that. And at this point in my mind, I'm thinking, what can I do to make sure we get the kill? And it isn't just DPS, right? That's the thought process that's in my mind at this point in the game, is when I see a situation like this where we're so close to a kill, we've got 13% to go, we're going to hammer this boss into the ground. What's going to wipe us? Meteors are going to wipe us. Dark marks are going to wipe us. What can I do to make that better? So I spot this and instantly get over there. And I saw a Demon Hunter there. Demon Hunter, so good. Read the situation and was like, I would rather a ranged soak that than me. Now, this is the worst tornado ever. I'm going to show you how it changed its direction to hit me. It's going in one direction. Now, because this is a safe spot, I assume for some reason it can't hit this location. So it actually bends around to get me, which is a real pain in the ass. But the important thing here is to note that I have to make a decision here, because at this point, see, I clip it right at the edge. I have the Black Winds debuff. Now, this thing hurts a lot. Really hurts. Not only that, the boss has 2 stacks of Seer, which is pretty good. But you can see the raid damage. The raid damage at this point is in the millions, like every second. It's something absolutely stupid. And the nightmare is, this could kill me quite easily. But, and here's the but, I have a job to do later. I have a job to do later that needs my ice block. And I'm in a situation where I have to make a call here. Do I ice block this and potentially screw up my job later? But definitely allow the fight to continue. Because if I die here and I can't ice block later anyway, then we're screwed, right? I don't win either way. Or do I hope to get healed up? Now, my thought process as this was happening, and you do have to think this quickly when this is happening, because you will have some gut reactions at this point, which is like, I should ice block this away because I'm going to die. Is that this position is like where every ranged person is, therefore there's a ton of AoE and group healing going on here. And I'm hoping and praying it's enough to keep me alive through this. But you can see my health is just going to be bouncing around here for the next 7 seconds. And I have to, like, bear that in mind. Move as quickly as I can to the next healing location just to survive. And it worked. Now, this is a real bummer. Anybody who's ever going to tank this, or if anybody has tanked this, the boss positioning to be able to keep the range in range of DPSing while still not destroying this platform from this Rupture Realities is about 3 feet. It's something ridiculously small, and it was one of the biggest headaches our tanks had to deal with while learning this phase in the over 100 tries they did it, is where do we put the boss so that we can stand here? This is another safe spot where the Black Winds won't get you, but still keep in range of the boss so we can DPS it 100% of the time. And as you can see, the tank slightly missed it on this occasion, so we're out of range. Now, the problem is this this platform directly here is going to be destroyed, and if we fall in the lava, forget about it. If you're in the lava, it's game over, man. It's game over. Not only the raid damage at this point is so high, it is so high that anybody who gets a debuff at this point pretty much is going to have to suicide because the healers just won't be able to deal with it. So you can see us all kind of edging, trying to get in range, just managed to get in range there. Have to move back because the Rupture's coming and the lava's going to be there. Just desperately trying. You can see spamming the button. Now, this is the job that I needed to do later. I have to be at this platform. I'm assigned to it. I have to be at this platform to soak the meteor. So at this point, there's always a meteor on every platform, which means I have to soak this. Because if a meteor lands, forget about it. Now we get the dream, and this is I actually said on the voice comms at the time, I was like, perfect. I actually get Dark Mark. As I just said, we're supposed to be suiciding at this point, which means I could double up and really shine as a mage here. I loved this moment. This was gravy, pure gravy. So I soak my meteor, I ice block it, I take a solo Dark Mark, and I take the meteor. At this point, it's just a free win. That would have been a wipe, by the way, if I would have not done that. Got a lovely dodge there. And then that brought us to the kill. So you can see there was a few points there where we had to make some decisions which broke the mold, particularly in the start. This obviously started badly with the with getting 9 stacks. Very stressful situation. But why we had to make that decision, why you had to think about it, and not be that guy that's like, well, I had 7, I had to get out. It's your fault you're not there. That's the kind of mentality I definitely don't want people to have, is, well, it's your fault you weren't there. You're supposed to be there. Yeah, they are, but there's things going on, right? There's things going on, and things happen, and mistakes happen, and you have to be able to work around them. And not only that, he's dealing with a very stressful scenario. I can't tell you, this Black Winds situation here, this was a really tense moment because I was in a potential situation here where I was going to wipe the raid. I could have done a number of things there. I could have ice blocked this and then told somebody else to soak the other end one, which might cause, you know, when you say something like somebody needs to soak the second to last platform, is you might get 2 or 3 or 4 people trying to do that because they don't want to wipe. And that then significantly lowers the DPS. It could lead to all kinds of problems. Or worse, somebody doesn't go because they assume someone else will go and they want to kill the boss because the boss is on such low health. All those situations could have occurred. What actually happened by kind of trusting in the healers here, and it was a thought, it was running through my head all the time, I was like, I have to make a decision here, is it worked out super well because I got to soak and I got to do a Dark Mark at the same time, which massive benefit to the raid. I can't even tell you how quickly you can wipe here. And those are the things that I want people to pick up when they go into raiding. Certainly when it's a complex fight where there's lots of little things that can go on all at once. I think thinking about what you can do just to make the fight that much easier for other people, and making sure that everybody has the easiest time possible. And I always think that's what you want to be thinking about. It's what you think about when tanking. When you think about your tanking position, you're thinking is like, what is the best here for the DPSs to have the easiest time possible? And what is the best for the raid to have the easiest time possible? You can see how quickly people start dying at this point. It really is such a stressful part of the fight that it's worth just doing everything you can to make life easier. Otherwise, we're a few seconds away from a wipe there, but we managed to get it down anyway. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that gives you some insight as to, one, don't be that guy. It's my pet peeve, sure, but I think it's an important pet peeve to have when you're raid leading. This is a guide. This is what should happen, but it's not always going to happen that way. And you need to be ready for it not happening that way and dealing with it in the best way, making smart decisions all the way through. Whether it's deciding, look, this Shadow Blades, I need to make this a non-issue for everybody. I need to move this out as far as possible instead of just going to the absolute max range, and if it hits somebody, it hits somebody, but I'm going to squeeze that extra bit of damage out and all that kind of stuff. It's definitely something you want to think about. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.